Welcome to episode 3 of Building a Beautiful Town on the game Medieval Dynasty. And this episode we are the builder, so we're going to be going through my top 10 tips just to help you building your town. And we're still working on the mountain, so we're just going to get straight into this one. And yeah, we'll head into tip number 1. So the first tip is to customize game settings. Now I'm trying to get the game to a point where it's as sandbox as possible because I'm just purely focused on building and planning towns. I don't necessarily want to interact with the rest of the game mechanics like missions and stuff like that. Some people say that's boring or cheating, whatever, I don't care, nor should you, nor should they. So one thing that we can do to get to that point is to go into the pause menu and into customize game. This is going to allow us to manipulate the game settings to make it as easy as possible for us to sort of plan and build uninterrupted. And I'll put all of these settings in the video description as well, just for quick reference. So the first one we have is taxes. You can turn that up to 1,000 and that will make your taxes a lot higher. But for us, we want to keep it at 0, so we don't have to worry about paying taxes at all. So we don't have to go running back and forth from Piers or asking the wife to do them. Don't have to worry about it at all. So keep that one down to absolute 0. Second option is buildings limit. Default is 100%, which basically means you can build 70 buildings. Crank it up to 200%, and we can build 140 buildings. I'm on PC. I think it's the same for consoles, but on PC, can use mods to edit the game save file to get more buildings, but I would just use that as extreme caution, especially if you're in a big game save file. You don't want to end up corrupting all your hard work. Personally, 140 has been fine for me. I haven't really felt the need to go any higher than that, so stick with 200% for now and we should be absolutely fine. Next option is events. And completely up to you if you want to keep this one ticked or not. Just means the end of season events, if they happen or not, doesn't really affect us too much, so completely up to you this one. The next couple, unlimited HP and unlimited stamina, will affect us, so we want to tick these. Default would be unticked, tick is turning them both on. Basically just means unlimited HP, we're never going to die, nothing's going to damage us or anything like that. Limited stamina means that we can run and we can build and do anything that would use stamina, and it's never going to disappear. The only thing that stamina doesn't affect is your horse, so your horse's stamina still goes down, but otherwise your character's fine, so tick both of these ones. Then we move on to lack of hunger and lack of thirst. Again, default would be unticked. We want to tick them both, just means that we don't have to worry about eating or drinking or anything like that, so it's going to speed us up, so tick both of those ones. Next one is unlimited carry weight. This one's really important. Again, default will be unticked. We want to tick it. This pretty much does what it says on the tin. Basically means we are our own resource storage. So what that means is that we can go to the resource storage, empty it all out, keep things that the villagers will need, but otherwise empty it, and then we can basically have infinite logs, infinite crafting items, things like that. So definitely keep this one ticked. It's going to speed things up massively, so really important one, that one. Then we have poisoning and temperature, so they will be ticked as default, so we want to untick them. And again, just means that we're not going to get poisoned and we're not going to have to worry about getting too hot, getting too cold, so just turn both of those off. The next two are fast crafting and fast building. Again, default would be unticked. We want to tick them. These two are really important for us. Fast crafting doesn't mean it's going to be instant crafting, but it means essentially that the time it would take to craft one item, we can queue 100 and it would still roughly take the same time to do one item. So it's going to speed things up massively. Fast building just means one hammer hit will build each section, so you're not going to have to do multiple hammer hits for each thing. So again, it's going to speed things up massively for us. Then we have XP game multiplier and technology game multiplier. Default I think is 100%. We want to crank that up to 1,000%. I'm going to touch on this in the next tip, but if you are starting a new save game, definitely want to put these up to 1,000%. It's just going to mean all your building and technology unlocks are going to unlock well, 1,000 times faster. So definitely keep these ones up to 1,000. The next two options are new with the latest update, which are clothes and armor and tools and weapons durability loss. Default is 100%. We want to put them down to 0%. Again, does what it says, just means that our tools, weapons, clothes and armor, they're not going to degrade over time. So we want them both at 0, so we don't have to worry about building tools and things like that over and over. Then we have Dynasty Reputation Game Multiplier. Default is 100, crank it up to 1,000, and very quickly you'll be able to have the max population. The next option for us is very important. It's stop drops items from spoiling. Default is unticked. We want to tick it. This is really important when we're decorating. So if we were to drop a load of food, let's say apples, over time, as each season progresses, that apple would degrade where it would eventually turn to rot. So where you'd have a lovely display of apples on the table, the next year it would just be a lovely display of rot. So really important one to have ticked, that one. The next one is length of season. So this is in days, so 30 would be 30 days, 1 would be 1 day. This one's basically up to you. I'll tell you what I do, which is generally have spring, summer, autumn as 30, and then have winter as 1, because I just don't like winter. But what you can do is just adjust this as you're going along. So it might be that you want to plant a tree and you want to kind of see what that looks like as quickly as possible. So sometimes I might just put each season as 1 day until the tree is matured, and that just speeds that up basically. But otherwise, it's pretty much completely up to you. Next 3 options are important as well, which are all inhabitants' food, water and wood needs. So again, default I think is 100%. We want to put it down to 0%. This basically just means that all your villagers aren't going to have any food, water or firewood needs. That just means you're not going to have to worry about keeping the food storage stocked up with food, firewood. You get the idea. So it's going to make things a lot easier from a village management point of view. You're just not going to have to worry about it. Then these last set of options are all bandits and animals' HP and damage. So the HP is obviously the bandits' animals' health. So the lowest you can put that down is 10%, which is what I have it as, because it just means that if you're not particularly paying attention, you happen to stumble across a bear, 1 axe or crossbow bolt will pretty much one-shot kill it. So it's just not something that I have to worry about. Obviously, if you want that gameplay aspect, you can keep that up as normal. Completely up to you, but that's just what I do. Damage, kind of a moot point because we've got unlimited HP on, then the damage just won't do anything anyway, but I just put it down at 0 just for the sake of it. So with all these settings on, we can just crack on doing what we need to do and not have to worry about anything else, as little as possible anyway. Moving on to tip number 2 is save games. So those of you who have played before know that it can take quite a long time to unlock all the buildings and all the technology on a new save game. So what you can do is something that I've come up with, is basically to use an old town that you've built, which is fully functioning, has unlocked everything, and then use that save to create a new save. So I'm here in Hampshire, for example. So what I'll do is I'll go into the pause menu, I'll go down to save game, create a new save, and I'll call it Oxbow Start or Valley Start if you're in the valley. So now we've got a brand new save. We don't have to worry about overwriting accidentally our old save. So next time when we start a new build, we can simply go into the menu, load up Oxbow Start, and then we've got basically a fresh start. Everything's unlocked. We've got loads of resources, we've got loads of cash, and we can just get started like straight away. So you can see this is what I've done for this series build. What I've done is gone into Hampshire and I've just destroyed some of the buildings because I was at the building limit. So that's just freed up some space for us to build. And yeah, I can just go into the resource storage, I can grab everything I need. I've got unlimited carry weight on, so I literally have everything that I could possibly want, and I can just get started like straight away. And as and when I need more buildings, I can head back over to Hampshire, I can just destroy some buildings that we don't really need, and that is just then running in the background. So every material that I use is being replenished because the town is functioning in the background. You can do it another way if you don't want to do it this way, and you can just completely destroy the town and have everything unlocked, and then you really have got a clean slate but I think this works better because you've already got all the resources running in the background, so you should never ever really run out. Moving on to tip number 3, which is keep it consistent, and I'm talking about your tool wheel here. So keeping every tool in the same slot across your save, it makes things so much easier once you let your muscle memory set in, so you know exactly which tool is in which slot. You don't even have to think about it, just automatically click onto it as and when you need it. So keep them in the same spot. I use alphabetical order as they land in the inventory, so bag is number 1, iron axe is number 2, iron crossbow number 3, etc, etc. And yeah, it just makes things so much easier when you're not having to think about, oh, which slot have I put it in this time. Just keep it as it is. The other thing I'd recommend you doing is keeping all of your tools on you at all times. Just makes things so much easier that you always have what you need to hand, so you're not running across the map and thinking, oh, I won't need my axe, and then suddenly, oh yeah, I need my axe. It's just always there, except the loss in your inventory space, because it just makes things so much easier. You're not having to run back and forth all the time. Tip number 4 is something that I get asked a lot, which is adjust the house height. Now, you can't actually adjust the house height in the same way that you can with walkways and piers, which I'll show you later on. What you have to do is use the land to adjust the height for you. So if you're on perfectly level land, you'll get a stone base like this. You can spin it, but you can't adjust the height. So what we need to do is move it onto slightly less level land, and you can see that then moves to stilts. And if you want the stilts to go higher or lower, you basically just need to find a bit of land in which the angle is just about right to move it. So you can see here the angles of the land is a little bit steeper, so you're going to get a greater difference in the stilt height from the back end of the house to the front end of the house. That is the only way you can do it. There isn't any other way around it, unfortunately. So it's just a game of trial and error. Just try and find the right bit of land and you can get some quite steep stilt heights. Tip number 5 is build under stilts. So there was a recent patch that kind of combated this a little bit. So you previously were able to build a lantern which went inside the house if you didn't build the foundation first, so you just had the blue section here. You can see now you can't actually do that, they patched that out. But what they didn't patch out is being able to build underneath the stilts. So you can see here I've got barrel, and I'm able to put them underneath the foundation blueprint. There are a couple of sort of rules to this. One, obviously there needs to be enough height for the barrels to go underneath, or whatever it is that you're building underneath it. And you also need to just have the blueprint down. You can't build the foundation physically itself and then build underneath it. It needs to be at the blueprint stage. But using this method, you'd be surprised at the kind of things that you can actually build underneath here. So you can see here we can actually get a cart underneath it. So you can build some quite good looking sort of scene areas here. You can build little gardens underneath it, or you can use them as storage areas. You can get benches underneath, but I've found since the update it's quite difficult to get them the right way around. So they're more of a decorational piece rather than something functional. But you can still get quite a bit underneath them, so it's quite an effective way to mix things up a little bit. Tip number 6 is change house layout. And I'm talking about sort of the orientation of the doors and the windows. This one's quite easy to miss because a lot of people know that you can change which walls have windows on, but a lot of people miss that you can actually change the door as well. So most people will go up to the wall where they want the door to be, try to change it and find that it doesn't work. What you want to do is go to the wall with the door first, hit edit, and then change that either to a blank wall or a window. Then you need to go to the wall that you want the door to be on, hit edit, and then change it to a door, and it will move for you. So you need to remove the door first, then put it where you want it to be. Then obviously you can edit all of the walls. You can still only put one door on, but you can have as many windows as you want. You can have as many blank walls as you want, so you can really play around with the layout here. I try to keep things consistent, so the door is sort of at the front of the house where the roof isn't sloping down. I just prefer that sort of aesthetic of it, but you can do whichever way you want. Tip number 7 is change house exterior. So very similar to what the previous tip was, but this time we're going to change the actual material of the house. So I have a little bit of a rule. You can see the house on the left here we've got is built on stilts, and then the house on the right we've got on stone foundations, so we just need a piece of flat land for that. And then if the house is a stone foundation, I use stone walls for that house. If the foundation is stilts, then I'll use log walls. So to change the walls, all we need to do is walk up to the wall that we want to change, wait for the prompt, which is X for me, and then it's edit. Then you have your 3 options of wall, window, or door, and then once we go into that category, we get another 3 options, which is wattle wall, wooden wall, or stone wall. So yeah, for me, stone foundation, we've got stone walls. Wooden foundation, we've got wooden walls. But then we can still kind of mix things up a little bit as well. So the top wall, sometimes I'll leave as wattle, just to give it a little bit of a mix and variety of materials. And we can also change the roof by doing the same thing. And again, we've got 3 different options there. And I don't use the same roof for every single house. I tend to use either the wooden or the plank roof, because I think those look better, but I will sometimes use thatch as well just to mix it up. I don't think it looks the best when every single house is exactly the same. It's just the best materials, all insulated. I just think it looks a bit too the same and just doesn't look right in my head. So try to mix it up and give it a little bit of variety. You can also use some houses where like half of it is stone wall, half of it's wooden. You can insulate certain parts of the walls to give it a little bit more of a different sort of aesthetic effect. But yeah, just try and mix things up. Don't keep things exactly the same because I think it sticks out like a bit of a sore thumb. You can also use insulation to add a bit of variety to your houses. So this is a bit of a favourite of mine. Log walls with a wattle wall at the top, adding insulation to the wattle wall, and then similarly on the stone house, having a wooden wall at the top and then adding insulation to that as well. I just think it adds quite a nice sort of different pop of colour. And yeah, so these 2 houses here are pretty standard houses that I would make, but have a look at different options yourselves, and obviously you can fall on something that you prefer and think it looks the best for your house and town. Tip number 8 is piers and walkways. So if you head into the build wheel and select platforms, we can then have a selection of different piers and walkways we can choose from, and then we can do a few things with them. We can rotate them using L2 and R2, or whatever button prompt comes up at the bottom of your screen here. And then we can press up, which will change it to height, and then L2 and R2 will change the height difference. As I say, those controls will change depending on which version you're using, so just check the bottom of the screen to see which one it is for you. Some platforms will go higher than others, so the one that we were just using didn't go very high at all, whereas if we check the wide bridge, you can see it goes a lot higher. The rest of the other piers and walkways will go that high. It's just literally that first walkway that won't go that high. So just avoid that first one if you want something a little bit taller. There's a few different things you can use these for. You don't just have to use them for bridges. What I use them for is to make different entrances for your houses. And it's a little bit tricky way to do this, but it does work. So if you select your pier and you head over to where the door is, you can't build there, it's all red. It doesn't matter which way you spin it or anything like that. It's just going to stay red. So what you want to do is change the door to where you don't want it, and then head over with your pier to where you do want your door. So now you can see I can build right up against the house. It's green. There'll be a certain point where it goes red, but you can butt this right up against the house. So go to where you want your door and then butt it right up against the house. And then we just need to check to make sure it's level with the foundation of the house, and that's all good. We need to do this before we've actually built the foundation itself, so just at the blueprint stage. Then we can build both of those things, build the frame, remove the door from where it is currently, change it to a window or wall, and then we can change this to an actual door. And you can see we can actually build there. And that just replaces the kind of like weird step that's there, and we can just basically change it to whichever way we want. So what I'm going to do now is add a little ramp to the entrance of that, and then it just adds a more straight section leading up to the door rather than sort of a weird angle. Now we've got a little bit of a problem because there's grass that's coming through the walkway, so there is a way around that as well. So if we delete that, put a path down, what we can actually do is still build a walkway over the top even though there's a path there. So we can build that, and then we've got rid of the vegetation that's coming through there as well. Another thing I like to use the piers and walkways for is to create kind of like balconies for your houses. This is quite tricky and it involves a lot of trial and error. This was not the first time that I attempted this section of the video, this was about the 10th time. So yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, so don't think you're going to get this first time. What you want to do is start with the corner section. So a corner part of a pier, and then again we want to try and line that up with exactly the same height as the foundation. So using the height tool, L2 and R2, get it exactly level with the foundation of the house. What we don't want to do is place that corner too close to the house, because it's very difficult to get the exactly right angle. What will happen is either section that you try to put on either side of the corner, it will either angle inwards towards the house and just turn red. So don't try to get it as close as physically you possibly can. Try and move it slightly away. The other issue that we're going to encounter is that because there's only a set amount of pieces to build from, none of them are equal the length of the house. So either side, whichever way we go, we're either going to cut too short, just like that, or we're going to cut too long and there's going to be a massive gap at the end of the house, which I think you should be able to see in a second. So what we have to sort of try and do is figure out a way to either incorporate another house into it so it stretches all the way across, or we put like a dead end at the end of the balcony. So unfortunately, yeah, we can't wrap it perfectly around the house without leaving a massive gap. So yeah, instead what we're going to do is destroy that part of the pier and then add a short piece and then a dead end piece at the end as well. So as I said before, this is very much a trial and error. Nothing is going to fit absolutely perfectly, so it's just going to be a case of trying out different ideas, finding out which solution works best and looks best for whatever part you're working on. But hopefully at the end of it, what you should end up with is quite a nice little balcony, and whilst we can't build furniture on top of the balcony itself, there are some sort of tips and tricks that I'll come on in the next episode to make it look a little bit more decorative. Moving on to tip number 9, which is layer it up. And I touched on this in the previous episode a little bit when we were talking about fences, and essentially what we're talking about is using multiple different fence types sort of built on top of each other or in front of each other and behind it to create a different looking fence type, basically, which is exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm just making a square section of stone wall, and then I'm using wattle fence to place it in front of the stone wall, and that's just gonna add a little extra layer, which is going to add a bit of variety to what would normally have just been a plain stone wall. So eventually we'll end up with something looking like this, where nothing absolutely crazy, but it just is a little bit something different to just a plain old stone wall. And we can take that a step further as well using an iron fence. So if we select iron fence and then we place that at intervals where the wattle fence ends, then what we end up is little stone pillars, which again just add a bit more depth to our wall. So with the iron fence, what happens is if we just place it down like this, but we don't actually build the fence itself, what we get left with is basically just the stone pillars or the stone columns that go in between each section. Quite a good item to get creative with. And also you don't use up any stone doing this as well, so it's just resource free. So again, what we end up with is something looking like this, where it just stands out a little bit. It's not just a plain stone wall fence, it's got a little bit of depth to it, it's got a bit of variety to it, and it just looks a little bit different. You can also do a similar thing as we did with iron fences with simple plank picket fence. So we can just place the foundation of it down. We end up with 2 posts. If we don't actually build the fence, then we don't use the resources. We're just left with these 2 posts, which you can use as a nice little entranceway. And there's loads of different variations you can use with this. So as you can see, I've built this sort of fence world to show off a few different ways you can do it. So this is using the simple plank picket fence as basically fence posts in between the plank fence. If you want something a bit more sort of fortified, you can use palisades in front of the log fence here. And again, you can put the stone wall in front of the palisades And we can also incorporate the piers and walkways into it as well. So this adds a bit of a walkway to a wall. So if you're building sort of more of a fortified town or going for like a castle kind of thing, then you can use that to good effect. There's probably an infinite different number of combinations that you could use. It's all about just trial and error again, just coming up with sort of variations that you're happy with and fit the aesthetic of your town. But yeah, they're quite a good way of getting creative, using half-built fences with fully built fences, and using the stone columns as well as the fence posts, just to create a little bit of variety in your towns. So just keep trying, use different methods, and just see which kind of idea you land on. You can also use gates as well in a similar way. So here we've got the iron fence with a simple plank picket fence in the middle and an iron fence at the back, and that makes sort of a bit more of a defined gateway. And again, similar kind of things here, just using the stone pillars and the wooden posts as sort of entryways. This is something you can do with the log gates. There's two different types of log gates laid up against each other there, and again, it's just all about trying to do different things and landing on an idea that fits in with the aesthetic of your town. So my final tip for this episode, tip number 10, is to think outside the box. Now we're over at Fort Rasimir here because I wanted to show you a few examples of what I'm talking about, which is using buildings as they weren't intended. So for example here we have got a windmill which I haven't built fully, so I think there's 8 walls that I haven't built, and what I've done is then sort of manipulated that building to look like a watchtower as much as I possibly can. So yeah, this is all about thinking outside the box, using things as they weren't intended, getting creative with them to create something unique for your towns. Another example of this is in my town Swampton, where I built this pagoda from a hen house, which again I just haven't built the walls, and then yeah, we end up with something that kind of resembles a pagoda, and then we can use layers of fences around it to create a bit more of a visual effect. So I'm using quite a few different examples here of buildings that I've done in previous towns, and for most of them I've done tutorial videos of how exactly to do them yourselves, so I will link to the videos in the description, so if you want to see exactly how I've done them, then you can click on them, and yeah, I'll literally talk through every single step of the way of doing them all. But that is pretty much it for this episode. Hope there's been some tips in there that you didn't know about, and yeah, hopefully that's going to inspire you to go on and build your own towns. But as always, if you have any questions or anything like that, drop them in the comments. I'll always answer them, provided that I don't get inundated with them, but I'm keeping on top of it for now. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hope you found it helpful, and if you like it, then please subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episodes, and feel free to share with anyone that you think may be interested as well. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Next episode will be about decorating your towns, so stay tuned for that one, and yeah, take care for now.